So I've been watching some films that I've watched for the second time, and then ended up liking a whole lot better than when I watched them the first time. This is not one of those films. I liked it even less than the last time I watched it, to be honest. Never liked it. I always found it the least interesting in the franchise. But yeah, this time it was no different, and actually just just a lot more corny than I remember it. And kind of boring and a really weird writing direction on where Leigh Whannell decided to take it from Insidious Chapter 3. I know he directed Chapter 3, but I'm not 100%. I think James Wan wrote it. But Leigh Whannell definitely wrote this one, and this one was directed by somebody completely different named Adam Robitel. Directed The Last Key. And yeah, it follows Elise basically, and it really emphasizes on her childhood and how she was raised and a lot of abuse that she's succumbed growing up, which is a very interesting direction on paper and something that sounds like there's a lot to be done with kind of thing. And even what they bring up is very interesting because it starts off with her as a little girl, and her father is very scared of her gift and basically abuses her by beating her and or locking her in the basement when she starts to talk about ghosts and all that. And she suffers a lot of mental trauma and physical trauma, obviously, because of this, and she starts to feel very insecure about her gift, but her mother is always on her side, and her mother is basically her superhero and telling her never to give up on her gift in being, a psychic. And then it cuts to present day where she is an adult, and this film takes place again before the first one. So, continuity wise, it's part 3, part 4, and then part 1 and part 2. And she gets a call from a guy named, what's his face? No, not Gerald. Ted Garza. Ted Garza calls her, and apparently this guy named Ted Garza is living in the same home that Elise grew up in. And she's very hesitant in taking this call because she has just way too much trauma involving this house. But because she was familiar with the evilness that was in this home. Or she doesn't even call it a home, she calls it a house. She actually mentions that. She's like, it's a house, I don't consider it a home. She does take the call because she knows how dangerous the evil is in this house. So she does end up going to New Mexico to help out this guy. Now, I don't know well, I know how I feel. I just don't know why they decided to go in a direction where Elise's father was actually holding a prisoner in the basement, like a live young woman, and torturing her and keeping her locked up in the basement. And it turns out, as the plot goes on, that Ted Garza is doing the same thing. Now, is it the demon in the house not possessing because or influencing their mind, because there's no point in in the film where either of these people, the father, Elise's father Gerald, or this guy Ted Garza, are possessed necessarily. They're just average Joes acting like psychotic serial killers, I guess. Like the demon plot is still there, but the whole like entity thing, the further it's just kind of taken away. It's in the movie, but they add this whole realism thing to it, where even Elise, as a child, thought that this woman was a ghostly presence, and she grew up and has a vision, and then it ends up being that her father was actually holding a young woman hostage, which, I mean, don't even get me started on how the wife never knew, or Elise's little brother never knew. But I just don't get it. And then there's the main demon in this one named the Key Demon, and I just call him the Key Demon because he has a hand full of keys. And apparently they connect him with the third film where when Elise went to help Quinn in the further, she went through a red door, and this Key Demon he's the one that unlocks all the doors, and then she has a connection with her childhood self, and grown woman Elise meets little girl Elise in the further in the third act, and then little girl Elise explains that this Key Demon can open all the doors. I don't really know what open all the doors means. The doors to people's souls, the doors to bring them from our world to the further. Those doors, I don't know. There was, the film is introduced where little girl Elise discovers this door, which is not actually there. It's kind of a door to the further, I guess, and then there's the mother's death because this this film is very confusing. I was not feeling this one very much, but I'm trying to explain it as best as I can. I just finished watching it, and I'm trying to. It's a head scratcher. I don't know. I gave this one a 38 out of 100. Why out of 100? Because I hate decimals, and I'll give it that makes it a 2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Guess who's back? Spectral Sightings, the Ghostbusters. They're the same. The only thing that changes on their names are Tucker and Specs. The only thing that changes on Tucker is his hairstyles. This one he has long hair. Part 3 he had that friggin' mohawk thing going on. There is one thing in this film involving them that actually did make me laugh for once. Something that's actually legitimately funny, even though it still doesn't belong in this film because of the serious themes of this film combined with this, like I've mentioned in all the reviews I've done on Insidious, is when grown woman Elise runs into her brother who disowned her because I found that very sad. How Elise ran away from home as a 16-year-old girl and then years later meets her brother again, Christian, and he doesn't want anything to do with her because his big sister left him behind with crazy ass dad. And he has 2 daughters. First of all, he looks like their grandfather, not their father. 100%. I don't know when he had those girls, in his 40s or something, I guess. But these 2 girls both are hot as hell. But here's Tucker and Specs, these Ghostbusters from Spectral Sightings, just cringeworthy game. It just the clips of them trying to hit on these girls is entertainment enough to to kind of justify the film, to keep the film somewhat entertaining. That one specific scene in the diner, but every scene that they're trying to hit on these girls is makes the film entertaining enough. It's the most entertaining parts of the film, literally, and it's just these dudes very badly hitting on these girls, and it's just hilarious to see. I loved those. For 2 characters that I really don't like in this franchise, they were the best parts of this film, in my opinion. So yeah, Mr. Garza, or Ted Garza, ends up having an actual human being locked up in the basement again. Reasons unknown. It's a weird direction, in my opinion. There is a scene involving a shadow person closer to the beginning of the film where it appears, starts to kind of creep up on Elise. Now, I've, especially in the last few months, been getting very creeped out on the idea of shadow people. Sometimes I can't even be in dark rooms because all I imagine is like either having a hallucination or seeing like some dark figure in the corner or something like that, and the idea of it freaks me out because I've heard stories of like sleep paralysis and people actually seeing shadow people and shit like that. God bless me, I hope I never have to deal with that in my life. I never have, and I really hope I never do. But yeah, that scene was the creepiest in the film for sure. The entities are really kind of cheap in this one. The whole film feels a little cheap-ish, but the villains and the demons and the ghosts also just feel cheap. They're not as fleshed out as they were in the last few films, in my opinion. Especially 2 and 3, where they really were fleshed out and very creepy looking. This one just kind of half-assed it, in my opinion. It was cool that the female ghost led Elise to the basement to find this imprisoned woman by Ted Garza, and then Ted Garza obviously ends up being arrested and all that. And when Elise hits the further, like I said, she meets up with her little girl self in there, and she again is there to rescue Melissa and Imogen, the daughters of Christian, the daughters of Elise's brother Christian, the guy who looks like he's their grandfather, but apparently is their dad. It's cool how the demon uses his keys to, like, even though it's CGI like crazy, to mute his victims and then chain them up in the further, or kind of like drag them to the further by piercing their heart with a key, kind of thing. Maybe that's what I think the whole unlocking the doors are like kind of refers to a person's soul being brought into the further. That's my take on it. That's my best guess anyway. Other than that, I have no idea. And then, of course, Elisa's mother, in the further, her spirit's self, is the one to rescue Elise in the further at the end of the film. And this is after Elise, rescues everybody's soul, including Melissa's, who was brought from the demon. See, this film just, it doesn't seem to connect any, like, there's too little answers in this film. It's just things happening, but with no real explanation on why they're happening. Like I mentioned with the two characters who are keeping women in prison, they don't really explain how or why. You're just left to guess that they were manipulated by demons, I guess. I'm giving it my best shot. I don't know. I really didn't like this film too much. It was a weird entry in the franchise. It's funny to say how much I was dissing the Ghostbusters spectral sightings characters so much throughout this franchise, but their scenes, especially with involving the chicks, are the best part of this film. Kind of shows you how weak this one is, to be honest. But honestly, this is a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. But I'm just gonna have to leave it at that. I'll still buy this film because I'm a completionist, but I'm not gonna pay much money for it. I'll find it as cheap as I can used and just complete the collection when I can. But yeah, this one just under average for sure. Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice, or if you like my film reviews. I'll be back with lots more, and I have lots more on the channel you can check out. So until next time, have a great night, and cheers.